The air was crisp that morning, nipping its way through my sweatshirt as I fell into rhythm along the Hudson River. My escape, my way to clear my head before the city woke and the cacophony of life crashed in. My routine was a religion, a ritual. But that morning, nothing was normal. I hadn't seen him coming. One instant, my mind drifted off, legs striding automatically, and the next, boom! A body slammed into me and I fell backward, breathing caught in my throat as I staggered, attempting to cling to something solid. I crashed, but I didn't crash on the sidewalk. On him. For an instant, I couldn't breathe. His arms were hard, taut under me. The smell of new cologne and sweat. Clean, crisp. My mind lagged behind, heart thudding in my ears. When I finally managed to look up, I was greeted by deep brown eyes, just as shocked-looking as mine. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, calm, shaking me out of my trance. Embarrassment hit me like a second wave. I tried desperately to sit up, winces flitting about my cheeks. "God, yeah, I guess so. Are you all right?" He breathed a rush of laughter, fighting to sit up. "Yeah, just wasn't expecting getting tackled in the morning." I guffawed, brushing dirt from my leggings, trying to shake the peculiar buzzing under my skin. I wasn't that old, but next to him, I felt every one of the years between us. He was a guy who had the look of a man who was meant to be seen at an upscale health club, not a type of guy who got struck by a careless jogger. I stared at him again, the cling of his shirt to his skin. "Too much looking, stop that." "Sorry about that," I hastened to add, brushing it aside. "I wasn't even looking." He smiled. Easy, organic. Neither was I, guess we're even. We lingered there for a second, the city waking up around us, the hum of traffic growing louder in the distance. I should have turned and gone, kept running, but something about the way he was looking at me, like he was attempting to figure out a problem he couldn't quite solve, made it impossible. And then, as abruptly as we had collided, we parted. But while I ran, my mind was not on the pavement under my feet. It was on him, and on that look in his eyes. I told myself it was nothing. A moment, a chance encounter. But the next day, my eyes scanned the trail before I even realized what I was doing. Ridiculous. He had no business coming here again, and I had no business noticing. Days passed. Each run remained incomplete, as though I was waiting for something that would never come. It annoyed me the way my thoughts continued to revert to that morning, the way he looked at me, the confident ease in his voice. It had been some time since someone looked at me like that. And then, one Saturday, I exited my usual cafe, coffee cup in hand, and halted. He was standing across the road, leaning on a bench, earbuds in, oblivious. My heart did something stupid in my chest. I could have just walked away, could have left it alone. What I did instead was walk across the road before I could talk myself out of doing it. "Hey," I said, trying to sound light, but somehow ending up a little too weighty. He raised his head, surprised, and then smiled. "Well, look who's here." I could muster up a smirk. "Guess we're both creatures of habit." He chuckled, pulling out an earbud. "Or perhaps we just keep running into one another." I tried to come up with something clever, something casual, but my mind was a blank. He looked so effortlessly at home, like this was just a normal moment in his life. Then he said, "Want to grab coffee?" And so I nodded, before I could think of a reason not to. I reassured myself that it was only coffee, a simple exchange of words between two individuals who found themselves passing by each other. But sitting with him outside the cafe, the city noise humming around us, I could sense something different. He was simple to speak to. Too simple. No stiff small talk, no silences, only comfortable conversation that reminded me that I didn't know him. He leaned back in his chair, sipping his drink. "So, do you always run with your eyes closed, or was that a special occasion?" I shook my head, chuckling. "I was distracted." "By what?" His eyes remained on me, unreadable. I hesitated. What was I to say to him? By my life? By how ordinary everything is? by how long it's been since I've met someone who made me feel anything. Like things, I replied instead, trying to shrug. He nodded as if he'd heard more than what I was saying. Running clears the mind. Yeah, I grumbled, feeling suddenly awkward about the disparity between us. He was at that stage of life when everything appeared to be possible, a new beginning, infinite choices. My life was smaller, more contained, like I'd used up most of my choices already. I looked at the time, as though I had an appointment to keep. I should probably go. He didn't try to stop me, just smiled. See you around? I didn't nod fast enough, half a beat too slow. Yeah, maybe. But deep within, I already knew. I'd be looking for him again. It wasn't coffee only, it never is. A coffee turned into another, then a late afternoon walk, into messages I found myself waiting for. I convinced myself it was nothing, that I wasn't attaching, but the flip in my stomach when I saw his name on my phone told a different tale. One night, he proposed a jazz club in the downtown area, the type of establishment I hadn't entered in years. I lingered, but then I noticed the expression he gave me, like he wanted me to be there. The music was low, the lights soft, casting across his face in shadows. We talked, we laughed, the conversation drifting into things that seemed deep. Regrets, what-ifs, the weight of time. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed this, being seen, being wanted. As we separated, the air was thick with something unsaid. On the outside, the city thrummed past us, but I barely noticed. He turned to me, gazing at my face like he was balancing something, and then in an instant it did. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't rehearsed. It was just right. A moment was something else. A second I'd always remember, and it vanished just as quickly. But it was all different. Everything had changed. I should have known better. Two good things never last. It began simple. Morning runs became a habit, inside jokes, and those quiet moments when you didn't require words. The kind of connection that sneaks up on you, where you lose sight of the walls you built. I told myself I wasn't falling, that this was just a good time. But the way he looked at me, the way he lingered when he departed, spoke differently. Something shifted. The messages delayed. The plans became vague. He was busy more often, his responses curt, devoid of warmth as they once had. I figured it out but wrote it off, telling myself I was imagining things. But in my heart, I knew. A night, I saw it with my own eyes. I was walking away from the cafe when I saw him on the other side of the street. He wasn't by himself. A woman was laughing at his side, her hand on his arm in a gesture that sent my stomach in knots. He leaned forward, smiling down at her, and in that moment reality was a punch to the chest. I could have walked away, I should have. But for some reason I stepped out into the street. "Hey," I said, my voice toneless, hiding none of the storm brewing inside me. He looked up, surprised, and then in their depths something flickered. Guilt. I stood there waiting for him to speak, to offer me some kind of response. But he did not. He just stood there, searching for words that eluded him. I let the silence stretch out before I nodded, forcing a small smile onto my lips. Got it? Then I turned and went away. I didn't cry, didn't let the anger surface. I just kept walking, lighter with every step. Because the thing was, I'd already lost him before I even saw it. And maybe, just maybe, that was for the best.
This is an artistic and fictional creation intended for both entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Some scenes and dialogues in the video are part of a dramatized performance and incorporate elements of grotesque, satire, and exaggeration. The creator stands against discrimination, violence, and hatred. This channel fully complies with YouTube's policies and does not infringe upon copyright laws.
Bye.